There's four parts of language and literacy. We want to talk about their comprehension, their phonemic awareness, their fluency, and their vocabularies. Let's talk about it in terms of a spectrum. So on this side, we start with phonemic awareness. They're just learning the phonemes, the sounds of the words, right? The sounds of the letters, how to manipulate those sounds to make different words. That's phonemic awareness. They're starting to understand these symbols have meanings, they have sounds. They take that and go to the next thing, which is putting it together to make words. Those words build vocabulary. So then you build their vocabulary, as many words and symbols and combinations that you can. You get them to recognize words. And then after the words, they start to recognize the words, have them put them in sentences, because that will drive them to the next phase, which is comprehension. They'll begin to understand that not only are those symbols, sounds, letters that make words, and words can be put together to make sentences, those sentences mean something. So then they start connecting words with understanding and comprehension. And then the last part of that is making sure they have fluency. How easily they can put those words together. Are they reading their sentences with expression, how fast they go, how slow they go, are they paying attention to the punctuation, things like that. All of that kind of helps to build their language and their connection with the world and the words around them. So how do you create a language-rich environment? I told you I get excited about this because I've already shared a lot of those strategies with you. So first of all, remember that you have 4 C's. When you're talking and listening, make sure you're engaging with them. You have the four, isn't necessarily 4 C's, but we can talk about literacy and encompassing that. So strategies for engaging in meaningful conversation: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Reading those stories, asking questions about those stories, asking them to judge. I even bought a book here tonight. What I used to do during our story time is I would let my daughter look at the book, try to get her to figure out what this book might be about. A boy, red balloon. Oh, red balloon, very good. That's a descriptive word. It tells you color. What color is his shirt? We would talk about that. I was like, this is the spine of the book. This is what holds the book together. And here's the back of the book. What do you think it's going to be about? Or his name is Eli's balloon. And I would have her say those things and we would go through the story together. I would have her look at the pictures, or sometimes have her turn the pages, so that when we're going through the story, she's getting as much out of it as I am, right? You can tell her this book was written by, to write the story is the person who's actually telling the story, putting the words, and you can tell them that's an author. Or this book was illustrated by, illustrated. That's not a word you hear often, but it means to draw the pictures. You like the pictures? That is exactly how I would talk to her during story time. And I'm a teacher too, so I used to talk to my students like that during story time. Those are things you can do to make the learning and the reading engaging and exciting. Choose stories that about things that they like. If you have a child who's obsessed with dinosaurs, choose a book about dinosaurs. Or you have a girl who's obsessed with fashion, everything is fashion. Anything that they are interested in, make sure you have information or books about that. Tell stories about that. Encourage them to use language about that, because that's how you start to build this wonderful language, world of language around them. When you describe things with a lot of detail, be very descriptive. You can say those are pretty flowers, right? You can say those are pretty flowers. Or you can say, wow, these flowers just light up a room. They made a day that was really boring, really bright, and gave it life, right? Instead of just saying, those are pretty flowers. And encourage your child to do the same thing in those conversations. There's 4 parts of language and literacy. We want to talk about their comprehension, their phonemic awareness, their fluency, and their vocabulary. So let me just describe what each of those mean. I put some notes because I wanted to make it as accessible as possible. Let's talk about it in terms of a spectrum. So on this side, we start with phonemic awareness. They're just learning the phonemes, the sounds of the words, right? The sounds of the letters, how to manipulate those sounds to make different words, right? That's phonemic awareness. They're starting to understand these symbols have meanings, they have sounds. They take that and go to the next thing, which is putting it together to make words. Those words build vocabulary. So then you build their vocabulary, as many words and symbols and combinations that you can. You get them to recognize words. And then after the words, they start to recognize the words, have them put them in sentences, because that will drive them to the next phase, which is comprehension. They'll begin to understand that not only are those symbols, sounds, letters that make words, and words can be put together to make sentences, those sentences mean something. So then they start connecting words with understanding and comprehension. And then the last part of that is making sure they have fluency, how easily they can put those words together. Are they doing their reading their sentences with expression, or are they matching the feeling with what they're reading? How fast they go, how slow they go, are they paying attention to punctuation, things like that. All of that kind of helps to build their language and their connection with the world and the words around them. Okay? All right, let's keep going. Create a time for them that's especially unique for their literacy time. When you have your story time, like I said, I almost showed up here with my pajamas and maybe a little cup of tea or whatever. Make it a really special time. Have their favorite blanket, let them choose the book, anything that you can do to keep them engaged. And I feel like I'm just talking. Let me keep checking the comments because I want to make sure I'm engaging with you through your language over here. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk with you about is the definition of literacy and the components. So I told you what literacy is: the engagement of all these words, is how we interact and what those words mean to us in this world. But I also want to talk about how it's not just words, it's how we interact with those words, but it's our comprehension of those words, it's our communication with those words, and all those things put together will develop their academic success. Some techniques that you can use would be things like making sure that you do games. There are learning games. One of the games that I used to play with my students in school that they absolutely used to love, I would take their vocabulary words and I put them on cards, give them a board, and I would have them draw. Either we could call it Pictionary, or sometimes I would have them act it out, like charades. So charades and Pictionary are great ways to get them involved in using their language and learning how to express and making the connections between words and things. Another game children like to play, and those games are good for all ages, right? I'm a woman of a certain age, and I still like to play Pictionary and charades. Another thing that they like to play is I Spy. With I Spy, you would teach them how to expand their language by describing different things that are around them and have them figure out what you're talking about. Little kids really like that game. Sometimes I see middle schoolers play it too, but I Spy is a great way to expand the vocabulary and to help them interact and figure out the world around them. And those are great ways also to encourage their love for reading and there are things at home that you can do. So we've talked about going to the grocery store, playing games, having special times for reading. There's so many ways that you can incorporate language and literacy throughout the course of your day. So when your child comes home and you say, what did you do at school today? And they give you the standard answer. You all know what the standard answer is. You could probably type that in the chat. It was okay. Nothing. Most of the time when you ask the question, you're lucky to get anything. Sometimes you hear just crickets. You can start making them excited about it. It's time for reading. It's time for talking. Let me tell you about my day. Start telling them about your day, and then you'll be surprised at how all of a sudden they have so much to say. All right. Okay. Okay, let's keep it moving. Okay, so this is one of the slides. I think the next one is going to be an activity. So let me make sure I cover. I'm telling you, I'm just talking ahead of myself. The importance of vocabulary, techniques for expanding. I've given you all that, using language and using games and activities. I just went through that. How about I take a break? Because my body is like this. I'm ready to just keep going. Why don't you, in the chat, tell me some games that you actually use to help your child develop their language? What are some of the things that you do with them? I know I talk so much that I don't really give you a chance to engage in the chat. But tonight, I actually do want to hear from you. And I think it's good that the other parents hear from you too, because it's something about hearing from another parent the things that work for them. I don't see anything in there yet, but I know you have them. I know I'm not the only one playing games. Oh, singing songs, absolutely. Singing songs is a great way, especially the songs with learning the numbers and the letters. Yes, the ABC song, the counting songs. There are hand washing songs. There are potty songs. There are all types of songs. Even some songs that I don't know. I used to have these. What do they call them? I can't remember the name of them, but I remember my science teacher used to say, "My very something has something." I don't remember the whole thing, but each letter stood for something, and it was a way to help us remember our planet. My very educated mother just made us nine pieces or something like that. But way back then, when I couldn't figure out what the planets, that was something that our teachers used to use to help us. I see Mrs. Jean Baptiste saying it's a good device, repeating words and colors. Sometimes you can use flashcards. Flashcards are another way that another tool you can use to help them remember words. A word wall is also another great tool. Words that are new for them, or words that they are learning, or words that they really like, put it on a wall. Just make a little card of it and put it on a wall, and they can go to their word wall. That's something we used to do also in the classrooms. Okay? All right. Okay, so I thank you all for sharing, brushing her teeth to the Elmo, and Usher in her favorite movies. Thank you for sharing so much. Okay, so let's keep going because I see that I'm so excited that I'm talking and running out of time. All right. So we've been talking about stories. I shared with you what I would do as a teacher and as a mom when it was story time, how you can take the book and really not just read the story, but get them involved in all parts of the story. The title, the back, the bind, the author, the illustrator, having them really dive in. Be expressive when you're teaching, when you're reading to them. If you're teaching them a new word in the story, it's okay to pause sometimes and say, what does that mean? Or what does that sound like? Do you know this word or do you recognize this word? Because if you're building a word wall and they're developing all this language, remember by three, they have hundreds of words. So it's okay to take a break and let them start seeing those words. Use books where the words rhyme. They have word families. Dr. Seuss was excellent with this sort of thing. The Cat in the Hat was a great book with all the AT word families, and the kids, after a while, could know the words of the book just because they were reading those words that rhyme together. And it's great to read to them and to talk with them about stories. What's even better when they create their own, whether they're creating those through writing. If you have a child who's challenged with the writing, have them dictate a story and listen to themselves telling the story. Sometimes they get a huge kick out of hearing their voices and hearing a story. Let them use books on tape. Use books on tape to imagine what the author is describing and how that story is coming together. If you're trying to get a child more involved in reading, and I know it's hard, right? Because technology is so much more entertaining. Books were our technology. We got lost in stories. That was our escape. Now they have so many other things that they can escape with. So, as much as you can, get them involved in listening to stories or listening to you or telling the stories. And those are ways to incorporate technology in this whole process and get their language skills up. Okay. I went with you before through the activity with the book. This is the book that I'm actually going to share this story with you tonight. This is one of my favorite books. I used to read it every day to my students. They knew, and these are my preschool students, of course, they knew when they saw this book come out, it's time to get ready to lay on your mat and just listen to the story. We would start in circle, we would read it, we would go through, we would look at the pictures, I let them show me predict what the story is going to be about. What do they think about the story? Have they ever had any of those experiences that the person in the story has? Who's the author? Who's the illustrator? All the things that they like about the book. What are some of the other books that this author has written? We go through the story, and then once we do all that, they were ready for a nap. Oh, okay. All right. So next time you read a story with your child, try some of these things. Front, back, spine, title, predict what it's about.
Hey there, it's Dr. Rolanda from Bright Idea, and I want to thank you so much for tuning into our video today. If you've enjoyed what you've seen so far and you want more of where this came from, guess what? You're in luck. This is only the beginning, so make sure you're subscribed and make sure your notifications are turned on. That way, when we drop the next section of this video, you'll be one of the first to know. Thanks for tuning in and thanks for being a member of Bright Idea. Bye.